welcome to the Gary Diego Show. Tonight we're going to be discussing the topic of segregation and discrimination. Now, do you feel that it will always exist in our society? I brought a few guests along to explain their point of view. And without further ado, let's bring out our first guest, Rachel. Good evening, Rachel. How are you? It's great having you here. All right, well, let's get right into it, Rachel. I wanted to talk about a couple things with you. I mean, basically, your feelings on segregation and discrimination. I mean, do you feel that it will always exist in our society?
You know, I do. One main reason is religion. Judaism is based on the philosophy that, you know, one's dignity is totally reliant on their efforts, and those that are weak and unproductive do not deserve anything from that. And I think that kind of relates to homophobia in the world and how religion shapes people's tolerance of others. You know, some religions strongly, you know, have no tolerance for gays and everything. So I think that's a big reason why there's a lot of segregation and separation today, and there always will be.
Right. But don't you feel like we've made some progress over time, like the gay rights movements, the Jim Crow laws, Brown versus the Board of Education, the no more sleep movement in terms of, you know, between the sleepers and the sleepless and the supers?
You know, I still believe that people just are afraid of anything that's different and unlike them. For example, sleepers just hate the sleepless. It's because they're different from them. There's no apparent reason. Also, Tony Indovino, as we all know, was murdered because he was a sleepless in prison by by sleepers.
Mm-hmm.
The Sanctuary Council decided to murder Tabitha, the babies, and even Tony Sharifi. So I think that has a lot to do with segregation and separation, is that people are just afraid. You know, and you were talking about gay rights, but that's another thing. People are afraid of it because it's different and it's not like them. So I think that is another area where segregation is rooted.
All right, Rachel. Well, thank you for your time and sharing your perspective on the topic.
No problem.
Moving on to the next guest. Take care. All right, let's bring out our next guest, Kirsten. Everybody give a warm welcome to Kirsten. Hey, Kirsten. How are you? Here, go ahead and have a seat.
Hello.
All right, well, I kind of wanted to just get right into things with you because I was talking to Rachel, and she gave me her perspective on segregation and discrimination. Basically, I'm wondering if you feel that segregation and discrimination will always exist in our society.
I definitely do. It is a matter more or less of superiority. I mean, look at Sanctuary. They've created this whole community where they believe in kind of helping out each other but not giving back to the sleepers. They've also given us a term where we're deemed as the beggars in life. I mean, like I said, I think it's very selfish and kind of relates to the whole Hitler Holocaust thing. He wiped out 9 million Jewish people just because he felt that his race was a superior race.
But what about when people develop a learned tolerance? Like, let's say, for instance, Alice and Alicia and Susan, they never discriminated against the different groups, you know, sleepless, sleepers, supers, it doesn't matter. I mean, even the North and the South, where we are today, there's been slavery and segregation for over 4 centuries. But the North, they haven't really been as discriminatory as the South.
I think, again, it kind of has to do with superiority. It's more or less to people sticking with their own kind. I mean, I think it's great how Laisha and Alice and Susan can kind of come together and celebrate their differences and work together as a team to achieve things. But again, the whole sanctuary thing, it's, you know, they basically are sticking with their own kind. I mean, the whole We Sleep movement is created so that the sleepers can still have products that fund them, since the sleepless are taking, you know, all the money away. And there's also the whole thing of the norms, you know, versus the supers. They kind of feel like they need to stick with their own kind because they can relate with one another. I guess it's almost like how, you know, there are cities that are like Little Vietnam, Little Saigon, those types of places where certain races can stick together.
And do you think it's a race thing or more of a class?
I think it's just a mixture of everything. It's just feeling comfortable with people that you can relate with because you have those same interests and likes or feelings or those types of things.
Thank you for your viewpoint on that.
Okay.
Appreciate your time.
Alrighty. Thank you.
All right, thanks for stopping by. Wait, somebody's calling. Hello? What's that? Oh, it's the part of the show where we talk to civilians about what their point of view is on segregation and discrimination? Okay. I guess we're gonna have to take it to the streets. Now, do you feel that segregation and discrimination will always exist in our society?
I believe there'll always be a little bit going on. I do believe it's going down as of right now, but I think as long as people are still gonna dislike somebody, as long as stereotypes.
Yeah, I believe it will always exist in our society. Not necessarily in the same forms that we see today, but there's going to be individuals in the world that are always going to find an excuse to view others in a different way and put them down.
I think there's going to be some sense of degree, as of right now anyways, maybe somewhere in the future, people will be more accepting of everyone. I think we're headed that way, just there's still that there.
Definitely.
Sadly, yes. Only because I think that there's always going to be fundamentalist ideals that are going to perpetuate that kind of behavior. And as much as we want to root them out, probably sadly not going to happen. But that doesn't mean we're going to try to anyways.
You know what? I don't necessarily feel that way, because a lot of people blame it on genetics and that it's a whole bunch about survival of the fittest and whatnot. But really, it's like almost a learned thing. A lot of the times when people are exhibiting some sort of discrimination against another group or another, one group or another, it's usually because it's a learned behavior. It's something that came from their parents or people they hang around, and it just keeps going on and on and on. So unless you can stop it at a certain point and just say, no, this is wrong, then it's going to keep going. But you can stop it, because I feel like it is a learned thing.
Discriminate without even realizing it, and I think that it has progressed, but it needs a long way before everyone's treated based on their work ethic and personalities rather than their race.
Do you feel that segregation and discrimination will always exist in our society, and why do you feel the way that you do?
I feel that it always exists in our society because, they played such a strong role, in like 30, 40 years. But I feel like segregation and discrimination is going to be more of people take it not as serious as it used to be. It's more used as a funny thing, racial words and, are used like nothing nowadays, and they're not offensive to people. They're more just messing around.
Right.
So I feel like discrimination and racism it's really changed, and it's going to change drastically more like the next 5-10 years. Yeah.
And why do you feel that way?
There'll be people here and there saying, oh, this is you, or this is me, and people apart, you can't really tell who's who or what's what, so people get lost, people can tell that, oh, you're not our friend, or you're not our color to be in this type of predicament and friendship. So based on my opinion.
Yes, I do.
And why do you feel that way?
I think it's part of human nature. I think birds of a feather flock together. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. I think some segregation, people choose to segregate themselves, whether it could be people with a particular religious group want to segregate themselves. I think government discrimination, hopefully we could end that. But I think sometimes people choose to segregate themselves.
I would hope not, but it won't always.
Why do you feel that way?
I think that Well, it just leads to an unhealthy society. It leads to violence and people hurting one another and not understanding one another. And so I would hope that it eventually, with more understanding, goes away. Although
I think it will, just because people have this mindset. People are people. People are always going to judge other people, and they're always going to have certain cliques, certain like groups of people they're going to hang out with and don't hang out with them because they don't listen to the music we listen to, or they don't watch, or they don't dress like we do. In a way, that's segregating a person from and excluding them from a group of people. So, I mean, just because we're human, humans tend to have that tendency of just hanging out with their own kind, I guess, even though we're all the same.
Okay, we're gonna bring up our next guest, James. Come on out, James. How are you today?
Doing well, Gary. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well.
Hey, everybody.
Okay, so James.
Yeah?
I was talking to Rachel and Kirsten. Okay, there are a couple guests that were here moments before you, and I basically was picking their brain to see if they felt that segregation and discrimination would always exist in our society. I mean, what's your viewpoint on that? How do you feel on segregation and discrimination? Do you feel that it's always going to exist?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be subtle differences and even big ones, for that matter, in between, people. Everyone's different. People are always going to look for those differences to, find a group that they're comfortable with, And you could take, for instance, the Sleepless inside of Sanctuary. I mean, they're pretty much taught, a method of thinking against the sleepers. They're taught, to stick with their own kind, that the sleepers are inferior to the sleepless. And I mean, that goes all the way back to the South and the Civil War days in America. People, children being born in the South, in that area, were raised with a hatred for African Americans. It just depends on what you're born into, more or less, the type of learned hatred.
Now, what about the growing tolerance in our society? I mean, for example, the high school student that was talking to Leisha, where they had the little interview together, she asked him what his perspective was on the Sleepless, and he didn't understand how he could hate the Sleepless if he knew nothing about them. And also today, like the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the military, and the Defense of Marriage Act. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can agree with you there that a level of civility may have been reached within certain societies. But again, like I said earlier, people are always going to find a difference or a commonality. We'll say a commonality, not to focus on the negative. People are going to find a commonality within other people. Like, let's take money, for instance. Money has always separated society as far back as you can think. I mean, within the Sleepless, they've always dominated the economy. They're the ones with the best jobs, because they're able to work the most hours. So they're taking jobs away from the sleepers, and the sleepers then in turn create the We Sleep Society. And that right there is a huge separation, because both of those societies and both of those people are strictly buying from each other and working for each other instead of combining everyone's efforts. And that can be seen as far back as the dawn of time. I mean, there's always going to be a level of class with money. You can say, for instance, you make $100,000 a year, and your neighbor makes $20,000. You're not going to live in the same apartment as your neighbor. You're going to go out and be able to purchase a house. So that right there separates you. Because you have a job, you're making a certain amount of money, so you're going to live in a certain area just because that's what you can afford. You may not knowingly doing it, but subconsciously you're already separating yourself without already knowing it.
I mean, does that mean that if you started from where your neighbor was at and you buy yourself a nice house, are you going to be indifferent towards people with lower income automatically? Is it something that you learn because you purchased your house and you're making more money now, or does it just come with territory?
Well, I guess it wouldn't be automatically, but say you do start from where where your neighbor started, both working a minimum wage job, and as luck would have it, you get a better job, a better promotion, you start making more and more money, you're able to provide more for your family. Throughout time, you're going to stay in that neighborhood where your family now lives, and you're going to become friends with your neighbors, and it's like a snowball effect. That ball starts rolling, and pretty soon, like, your kids grow up in that neighborhood, they have kids, it's a snowball effect.
That makes sense. Well, we appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Take care, Ben. Woo! Okay. Well, that's about going to wrap it up for the Gary Diego Show. We'd like to thank all of our guests for stopping by tonight, and of course you, the audience. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Like a sound you hear that lingers in your ear, but you can't forget from sundown